What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers. We are recording this on Thursday evening. The Seattle Sounders have another preseason match this Sunday against USL Championship outfit at Louisville City FC, and then it's the start of the regular season. So we're laying down one more preseason show. And Noah is out of commission tonight. He's feeling sick. He is recovering from his big adventure to Marbella. So to pinch hit, we have brought in Spencer, our new Lobbing Scorchers data guy, numbers analyst. That I think intern. That's kind of your official title, right, Spence?
Yeah.
Those of you who watched the Lobbing Scorchers 4 a.m. preseason watch along, which if you didn't, you're a fake grinder, will remember Spencer. We're going to be having him on the show this year, and he's going to fill in for Noah here tonight. Spence, thank you so much for hopping on impromptu pinch hit duty. Season starting in less than 2 weeks, and we got a lot to talk about tonight. How you doing, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing great. First, I want to say, all glory to God. When Ari gave me the phone call, my agent said, "Hey, man, this is what we've been working for. It's what all the hours as an unpaid intern in the basement were for. So, just get out there, do what you can." So, just happy to be here. Happy to put in a good performance.
Big time opportunity to earn more minutes. Just make sure you're in the film room, in the training ground, grinding and giving 110%, trusting in the process, and you'll get the results that you want. Spence, it's exciting times. Like I was saying, this season is about to start, and we've got some fun topics lined up to talk about tonight. What we're going to do, it's going to be a little bit of a different show than we normally do with Spence on. Spence is into the data, he's into the numbers, he's into the math and all that stuff. And he's been working on some fun kind of data-driven projects and articles for Sounder at Heart that will be dropping soon. But there's a few topics from those that we're going to get to tonight, and he's going to kind of present them to you guys and to myself, putting the context into Sounders as a mega club. We're going to talk a little bit about their propensity for getting Liga MX coaches fired semi-regularly after playing the Sounders. We're also going to talk about some of the best contract values on the Sounders, but also throughout Major League Soccer, and what players around the league could be good fits or targets for Seattle. Spence has got a lot of good thoughts on that. He's got a dollars per goal breakdown. And then to wrap it up, we were going to hit some expectations for new and returning faces in 2026. We got a little list of players to hit. So, yeah, a lot to get to, Spence. I mean, I guess we should jump right into it. So, I guess to start out, You've been working. You've been in the lab for Sounder at Heart, writing a bunch of stuff. I've seen your player profiles that you sent us. You got about 40K words on that, and then you got a couple coming out. One on the Sounders roster building and the best values and the dollar per goal scoring breakdown and all that. So I guess first, why don't you just tell us about what you've been working on, and then we can kind of give our thoughts on it from there.
Yeah. So. Thank you for having me. And kind of first part I wanted to mention was we have two articles coming out, or I have two articles coming out. One is kind of like the Sounders don't need to trade, but like if they would, like who would they trade for? And that has some like outgoing and incoming. And then I've tried my absolute best to put together like a preseason expectations guide. One of the things I feel is perhaps a bit unfair to be a Seattle sports player on this wonderful team that we all love is the expectations are sky high all the time. There is not a chance that anybody gets to like get a pass. There's no Gauss rule theorem for guys this year. So, just going through the kind of the data, going through kind of the research that I've been seeing and some of the math that I've been putting together to say, okay, like what's a reasonable expectation? So when we're having this conversation in the stretch run, we can start saying, hey, this is good or this is bad, instead of just going purely off vibes, which are notoriously unreliable.
And what did you find from that? What was like the most interesting thoughts or conclusions that you came to while you were doing this research?
Yeah. So starting it from the very top here, the Sounders are a bit of a nexus event for a lot of Liga MX clubs. I'm going to go quickly through a list here, and I'm sorry for my pronunciation. But 2025, Cruz Azul, Martin Anselmi is fired after a 7-0 loss, right? It's called shameful, ridiculous in Mexican media. He's immediately thrown out, right? Also in 2025, Pablo Joede from Puebla is also tossed on his ear right before a Sounders match because they felt at that time he could not lead the team to glory against an American side. He has an interim coach, Martin Bravo, specifically to face Seattle. Like that was the narrative heading in we will not be embarrassed. And it did not work out so well for them that time. 2022, the head coach of Leon was also let go. The Seattle famously won that first leg in Mexico 3-0, and that completely destabilized his whole campaign, and he never recovered. That was a tailspin of death for him. And then finally, on Andres Lilini in Pumas in 2022, he lost the CCL final to Seattle, famously. And that was also a helicopter death spiral in the meeting he could never recover from. And it was also eventually let go as well. So all of that is to say, I think it's really easy if you are just a fan of the Sounders and you're not really bought into the big oligarchic media operations around the league to kind of feel like the Sounders are a bit of a like, oh, they're by themselves. They're kind of like one of one, but not in like a top tier way, just like in an other category. You know, you got your big heavy hitters, Miami, New York, the LAs, and then like somewhere on that list in tier, 1.5 is the Sounders. And that's just not true. I don't think there is any club right now besides maybe Miami who would not sell their souls for the last decade the Sounders have had.
Yeah, all these Liga MX coaches getting fired after playing the Sounders is a fun little trip down memory lane. I think my personal favorite on this list is the Cruz Azul guy. We followed the media coverage of Cruz Azul after the famous 7-0 in Leagues Cup last year pretty closely. And, they always get lambasted down there if they lose to an MLS team, especially in CONCACAF Champions Cup or Leagues Cup. But they really lambasted Cruz Azul for that one. That was tough. The tabloids were not happy about the 7-0. We were happy about it. I was very happy about it, but they were not happy about it. But I mean, so do you think is there actually a Seattle centric theme to that you notice? Because I do look at it and I'm like, well, that could be any MLS club beating a Liga MX team is going to lead to negative sentiment in Mexico and among their fan base. It could theoretically be something that's not yet necessarily unique to Seattle, and it could be any club in CCC. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So did you find that this was more frequent occurrence with the Seattle Sounders than other clubs throughout MLS?
So I think it's more in the way in which it happens, like no disrespect to any other team that has won down in Mexico, but there is a very big difference of getting a 2-1 off a 95th minute header and then winning 3-0 in the first leg and being absolutely dominant in possession the whole way through. It's just stylistically, the Sounders are able to put together these stellar performances against mid-season opposition at a pretty regular rate, Every now and again you expect a fumble. Every now and again you expect like some variance to come into effect, right? But I mean, we're talking about like 5 coaches here, That's not insignificant. And especially with, the media coverage could very easily also just go, well, they got lucky, right? And I think that's what we've seen over the last maybe 5 years is, they're still the little brothers to the north, but they're getting better. Like, good for them. But like, we're still number one. And I think it's a little easier to kind of hand wave. It wasn't their night. Oh, this. Oh, it's that. It's travel. But when you lose 7-0, when you're outpossessed by a factor of like almost 2,
you got like a Puskas nominee getting scored on you. It's tough.
Yeah, Puskas, you know what I mean? And it's rough. There's losing and then there's losing. And the Sounders don't do a lot of the latter.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on is right. Like, it's the nature of some of these results, like the 3-0 at Pumas that you mentioned. Mm-hmm. And obviously the 7-0, I would have been much more shocked if that coach had made it through the 7-0 than him getting fired.
I mean, at that point, I think for any Liga MX club, unless it's like,
well, and especially them, because remember there was like the the thing that came out that they were named like the best non-European club in the entire world like a week before they got 7-0. That was fire. That was fire.
They were. So, and the long and beautiful history of America versus Mexico soccer teams. You got Columbus, Ohio, 2-0. And I think you kind of can start to plant a flag of saying, hey, it's not going to be a fun time in Seattle.
They're going to have,
whether you're coming or we're going, it's not great.
They're going to have more chances to build on this reputation this year with CCC getting underway and Leagues Cup, of course. So let's see if the Seattle Sounders can get another Liga MX coach fired in 2026. That's a good find, Spence. That's good stuff. I love that. You've also been working on a lot of kind of MLS roster cost analysis, and you've got tables with a breakdown on exactly what the Seattle Sounders paid, the cost per goal. And there's some really interesting stuff on there that we got to get into. And then you've also got the same numbers from, I think you were saying all the teams in MLS, but specifically some of the Golden Boot contenders from last year. Mm-hmm. You've laid out exactly the amount of money that each team is paying for each goal. And I think when you look at it from a Seattle perspective, it gives you, for every team, but like looking at these Seattle numbers, it gives you perspective on where the best values on this roster are coming from. And I think that's valuable because that could be something that informs their decision making on whether to go out and spend a bunch of money on a new player, or just kind of how they're thinking about the roster value wise compared to how it's getting thought of from the outside. So when you were doing this exercise and doing this cost per goal analysis, let's start with what you found regarding Seattle, and then we can talk about some of the other MLS guys. But what were your biggest takeaways from breaking down the cost per goal for the Seattle roster and looking at how those numbers came out?
Yeah, for sure. Let me quickly just kind of frame this in context. So I was very privileged. I wrote kind of more of an academic paper on some just external research I did long before I was affiliated with you guys, or even, moderately having fun writing at Sounder at Heart. And one of the things I really got exposure to was the kind of under the hood evaluations that GMs, specifically front office staff, are doing. The easiest way to explain it is you are min-maxing for two things: the number of goals conceded and the number of goals scored. That's it. And every player can be basically broken down into a future value of what's the plus minus goals on the field, right? So basketball very famously has on the floor plus minus percentage. If you put someone on the floor, like, do they give you more points or do you lose more points with them on, what the trade-off is? You see it in March Madness. It's a pretty fun stat. But this is where this was born out of. I think perhaps a little unfairly, the Sounders front office is being like condemned for frugality's sake. And that's just simply not the case. So we'll go through here. And to frame this properly, I'll go ahead and I'll give the goal scorers by goal scored, and then I'll give you the cost per goal. And you just let me know what you think. So we got number 1, Danny Musovski, 16 goals, just under $600,000 per year, average cost per goal of $36.5K. You then have Albert Rusnak, who had a double-double, let's be clear. So 20 goal contributions. I'm just looking at goals here. He's on 2.5 mil. That comes out to $214K per goal. Jordan Morris was 7. Admittedly, he and George Manungu had just about the same playing time. So for reference and context, he's on 2.2 million. Comes out to about $322K per goal. And then finally, Obed Vargas with 5. He's on 134. And that comes out to about $27K per goal. That is a phenomenal distribution. Because specifically what you need to be looking for, and how I think we need to judge Craig Weibel and the whole front office team as they're compiling this roster, is up and down. 1, are your prime producers producing? And they are. That cost basis per goal, in my opinion, justifies Jordan Morris's salary for another year. Albert Rusnak, it's a bit unfair. He's asked to do more. He's asked to make shot creating actions and all the rest of it. And he also had a bunch of assists. So if you included assists with him, his numbers.
That's what I was gonna say.
He's on a cost basis.
If you did it by goal contributions,
yeah,
Rusnak's value would look a lot better than it does purely judging it off goals
yeah.
scored.
But if we just judge it off goals, even if we just judge it off goals, that is phenomenal. There are some questionable contracts that we do not have to get into. People paid, far more money up front who are nowhere close to that, And to frame it in perspective, if we aggregate it up to the whole team level, so we're at the team level conversation for the Sounders, as a team, they're on about $330K per goal. So that's total roster, and then you do the split between like who's actually playing, and then you prorate the playing time and the contract values and all that. So the math is fun. It's probably a little bit dry for this audience, but that's really, really good. That's in the upper 1/5 of the league. So that's putting them in company with people like Philadelphia Union, Minnesota United, Vancouver Whitecaps, San Diego FC, and the Chicago Fire. That is not ultra elite level company. And so I think if you combine the consistent year-over-year performance of the Sounders with the fact they're able to be more of a Moneyball team, where is the impetus to spend more? If Brian Schmetzer likes these guys and he's consistently delivering trophies and playoff appearances, and your cost basis is absolutely phenomenal, some of the absolute best, why rock the boat? Why rock the boat?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at this list, it kind of confirms what some things that I already thought. Like that Moose is legitimately, I think I don't know where he ranked league wide in your numbers, but he's got to be one of the best values in the league at $36K per goal with the amount of goals that he scored. I mean, that's pretty insane, isn't it? Like that's absurd value.
It is. The only person that beats him, and this is coming from like the top, this is coming from Golden Boot. So I only compared to people who were in the Golden Boot race because Danny Musovsky was in that race. Just, you don't want to look at a bunch of 1 goal, 1 assist guys. The only person that has him beat is Alonso Martinez from NYCFC, who did not play a full complement of minutes this year.
Yeah, and he's out with a torn ACL, but he was one of the most, I think, the savviest signings in the league for the was last year his first year in the league, or has he been in the league for, I think he might have been in the league for 2 years, but either way, he was brought in with not all that much fanfare and has provided insane value for NYCFC before he got hurt. And it makes sense too, like with some of the other clubs you mentioned, like the Philly Union, like these are clubs, the Whitecaps, these are clubs that are known for being savvy with the roster building and getting value like this. So it is good to hear that Seattle ranks up there with some of those clubs in this regard. But like it is a fun illustration of where the biggest value on the roster is coming from. Like you look at Obed with at 5 goals, $26K per goal. That's such a good illustration of the type of value that I feel like the Sounders feel like they got that type of value out of him, and it helped them win 2 trophies. And perhaps that's part of why they felt like it was okay to sell him for $3.5 million or whatever it was with incentives to Atletico Madrid, as opposed to maybe they could have been in a situation where they got those bids from Tigres and Club America, where they might have felt like they had to take it. But when you look at the value that he's already provided, I think that's something that they're taking into account that maybe people from the outside aren't taking into account. So maybe that could maybe help people understand why they were thinking of that in the way they are, in the way they were. There's a lot of reasons, I think, why, we've talked a lot about Obed's contract and all that, and his really insistence on going to Europe over Liga MX. All that plays into it. But just the value they've gotten with him coming up as a homegrown player and what he did for the first team and helping them win Champions Cup and winning Leagues Cup, that's you pretty much maximize the value you could have possibly gotten out of the player for the time that he was on the team. So it's interesting to see that spelled out like that.
And I think as well, if you want to look at some glass half full things about Obed, is reputation matters. So the part of the calculus I used to imagine Craig Weibel is performing is Atletico Madrid are on a tear right now. Obed is starting to get minutes. People are talking about him. Oh, he's an American. The Seahawks, were in the Super Bowl. That's something the Europeans are starting to get on board with. That's not insignificant. So I would imagine there's probably 18 months, maybe a little less because it's a World Cup year, where when Seattle gets talked about and gets mentioned, and then Obed's going to get mentioned, and then any sort of player agent's going to realize, one, MLS is a great place to be as a player. At least it used to be, in terms of like your family can come here, everywhere is going to have good schools, right? You don't have to just live in the city. You can have the suburb experience. But then as well is like they did right by the player, right? They could have just said, hey man, we have your contract, pack your bags, you're going to Tigres. Tough luck. We want the money. But instead, they've shown, and this was something Garth was phenomenal at, is we will do right by you. And yeah, we are maybe taking a gamble on any sort of back end that's going to come our way. But when you go to make that next signing and that next signing and that next, homegrown kid, you have a dude you can point to and say, we will do right by you. And we've proven it. We've proven we put the people above profits.
Yeah.
That's not insignificant.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's a great point. And you also got Paul Rothrock on here at 26K per goal. Rothrock on 104K last year and Obed on 134K last year. That's just that's pretty absurd. But like, that's the type of the best teams in this league. I think probably when you were going through it, you probably saw the best teams in the league have the highest number of of players that have these.
Yeah, so you actually kind of see a concentration and a clustering towards the center. So I'll give you an example. We'll go with the highest spending clubs, and we'll see if you want to trade places with any of them. Leading the line, Toronto FC, 900K per goal. You want to be in Toronto's position? You want to have Toronto's 2025? They spent. Didn't translate to a whole lot there. Atlanta United, 727K per goal. And I'm not in this model prorating any sort of transfer fee, which a professional club I've been told would do that. You have to bake in the transfer fee as part of the total compensation for the models. Don't want to trade with them. Inter Miami's a little bit weird. They scored 81 goals, which is just like by far and away just a ridiculous amount.
It is.
They also paid Lionel Messi like $29 million. So his cost basis is almost $1 million per goal, but I would argue it's very much worth it. They ended up netting out at about just a little bit over $500,000 per goal. I think Messi's one of one, and if you want to try that strategy again with somebody else, good luck. I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. And then finally, the one we can talk about is the LA Galaxy. They're just under $500,000 per goal. I don't think there's a single Sounders fan right now that's listening to the show who's like, yeah, I would love to trade places with, 3 out of 4 of these teams. And
Yeah.
I would argue we can see how well Miami does without Messi when they can't get people on absolute bargain basement deals because they have one of the world's greatest players who people are just performing abnormally to play with.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like with Messi specifically, the calculation is just different. Like you could be paying a lot in your cost per goal, but what they're gaining in players willing to come play for their team for way less than their market value, that is to me, that's a very Messi specific thing. And it's also, I've said this before, but it's also not like a blueprint that other teams can really replicate. The only way to replicate the blueprint of what Inter Miami did is to literally sign Lionel Messi, specifically him. Like that.
And they had to give him ownership, right? And so,
immense power in the organization.
That.
And it's all worth it for them. Like I'm definitely past the point of trying to downplay what they've been able to do with their roster, especially this offseason. It's gotten ridiculous with them. They got Mikael and Berterame. That's just 2 of the big time names that they've been able to get over the offseason.
And they've also been able to sell guys at what I would believe is a little bit of a market inflation.
Yeah.
Because of like that quote unquote Messi effect. He just makes everybody look that much better.
It's the Messi effect. And that's why like when I look at Moose, I'm like, that's got to be one of the best values in the league. But if you're talking about the actual best value in the league, they're getting it from Messi at 700K per goal, because basically no matter what you paid him, you would be getting just value back in spades for the type of players that he's been able to attract.
And I mean, and this year there's going to be 14 dudes who took pay cuts to be there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, when it was the Barca boys, it was like, yeah, but you got to like pay me too. Come on, man. And then they're gone. Like a lot of them are gone. I don't know. I don't really follow a lot of other teams. I kind of only interested in the Sounders, so I apologize. I don't have like a bunch of stats kind of prepared. But one last note. So I want to give a couple of outlays. I know we went through kind of the first 5 of the Sounders. Let's go through the back 4, right? Jesus Ferreira on 4 goals, goal scoring not his primary thing, just under half a $1,000,000 per goal. Pedro de la Vega, 344K per goal. He only had 4, so like, and this is, I think, is only counting league play.
Yeah, I think so.
So obviously you'd love that to creep up. You got Paul Rothrock, 26K per goal. That's going to go up, but like that's fine. And then you have KKR also on 26K.
That's a name that stands out. They got incredible value, and he's going to be on a low number again
exactly.
So that's.
But I think the thing you have to kind of understand is if you go through that golden boot, almost all those guys are at 8, 9, 10, 15, 20 million a year. And the Sounders are just as competitive, and their highest paid DP, let me make sure I get this correct, is Albert on 2.5. 2.5 is nothing. 2.5 is pocket change for some of these highest spending teams, Yeah. So it's something where I just, if there's one thing we could do for the community tonight, for the sickos, is just take a big breath in. The guys are cooking, the math is mathing, and exhale, right? You can absolutely be upset that we're not the buzzsaw, and it's not FIFA 26 on the PlayStation where we win every game 99-0. But we're all right. We're more than all right. We're sitting very pretty.
Yeah, I've always been very much on the page of like I only care about spending as it pertains to how it affects winning. So if you're not winning and you're also not spending, that's a problem. Like that's where the criticism over your spending gets deservedly notched up, because you're not doing ostensibly what you need to do to be more competitive and to contend for trophies. With the Sounders, they don't spend as much as like the Atlanta or the Torontos or the LAFCs or the Inter Miamis, but they stay in contention and they stay winning. So my kind of thought on that has always been, I don't really care. But I will say, like, I think there's valid concern with that as we launch into this next era of MLS, and you got Messi here and everything, like how sustainable is it becomes the question. They've done a great, admirable job of staying in trophy contention and winning trophies with running things how they run it, not spending big transfer fees, putting a big emphasis on youth development, and bringing these kids up to the first team and doing it the homegrown route, and making savvy intra-league deals like for Albert Rusnak and Jesus Ferreira. And it's been working, and we saw, I think, how well it worked last year in the level of footy they were able to play at times, and taking down Inter Miami in the Leagues Cup final. But there is, I would be lying to say the thought doesn't enter my mind of like, can they keep getting away with it? Can they really keep getting away with it?
Yeah.
And I think that is an open question. And from what I've seen, like they seem to have their formula down pretty pat, and it's been working. I expect it to work this year. But do you have any concern that eventually it might not work?
I'm going to give you 2 separate kind of ideas here. One, when's the last time we had like a holdout? Right. I mean, like a firm holdout. I'm not getting on the plane unless my new contract is signed.
Was Oba doing stuff like that? That's the only one.
No, I don't think Obed was doing stuff like that. I think
not Obafemi Martins.
Yeah, Oba had a little bit of that in him, right?
That's the main one that I remember.
Compared to the rest of the league, right? Like, and I just mean this as how I've heard it as a fan of this league. I mean, we've not had a Luciano Acosta. We've not had an Evander. We've not had, I'm forgetting his name, the guy who was in Brazil and just refused to get on the plane to come back to play in the league. But we've not had that, right? We've had such great guys that fit with the culture. When is the last time you saw a Sounders player scream at his teammates? When's the last time somebody threw somebody under the bus in social media? When's the last time you had to have, closed door private meeting about behavior? When's the last time we saw a mugshot photo? These are pro athletes.
No one's ever vaped on the plane, to my knowledge.
No,
for the
no one's ever vaped on the plane.
Shout out Bernadeschi. Shout out Insigne.
And so I think that what you have to keep in the back of your mind is to have that, you have to be ridiculously tight in your screening process. I've talked to a couple of GMs. I've talked to a couple of first-team analysts. Any given club is looking at about 7,000 people, 7,000 different players per open, positional role. So positional role would be you have your target forwards, and then you have your off-ball forwards. You've got your goal-scoring wingers, your defensive wingers. So those would each be considered a different position instead of just striker winger. So for a lot of MLS teams, the bottleneck is price. I would argue for the Sounders, and I'm just guessing here, it's price like everybody else, but then it's a second one of, well, how is he in the locker room? How is he with his teammates? And I mean, these are young bucks, man. These are dudes who are ultra competitive, who have every right to be selfish and say it's all on me and my career's in my hands. And we've done a remarkable job of finding dudes who can slot in and say the team is bigger than us all.
We got Spencer, our resident Lobbing Scorchers data analyst and numbers guy, on the show. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, please like the video and follow us on all socials, TikTok, Facebook, and shout out to our sponsors, Hacks and Ferments, Full Pull Wines, and Podium Menswear. Spencer, great stuff on that. It was interesting to look through all these numbers. Did you have anything else on the maybe league-wide analysis that you did here, and then we can get into the next topic?
Sure. Let me just end with my second point of, if you want things to keep you up at night, Brian Schmetzer is not a young man. The core Brian Schmetzer has utilized is due for replacement. Knock on wood, all love, all respect. But there will be a world that you and I will see where Brian Schmetzer is not the head coach of this team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's terrifying because any other league, it's all about the manager and all about everything else. The Sounders are multi-chain. So you got the academy feeding into the Defiance, feeding into the college system laterally, and then feeding up into the first team. One bad coach, if we get a Phil Neville in there for 2 years, I mean, that could cause some serious harm.
Yeah.
That could really, I mean, that could take years to fix, just all the way down.
I think we take it for granted, kind of the stability that Schmetz brings. And also just, we talk about it a lot, but his kind of unique connection and dedication to making the Seattle Sounders the best club that he possibly can. That's that's the thing he wants most in the entire world, is for the Seattle Sounders to be good and win trophies. And that's not a given for any coaching role for any club. In fact, it's actually quite rare. Most managers for most top flight clubs throughout the world are people that have been brought in from the outside, from elsewhere. And you can be a great coach and be in that situation. But I think there's something different and organic about the fact that he's really from here and really cares so much about the club and cares so much about the city. And I do find myself worrying or wary sometimes of the era after this, because like you said, all it takes is one Neville, as they always say. All it takes is one Neville, and you could end up being I would be surprised if this club ever bottomed out, knock on wood, but it's not crazy to think about a scenario where in the post Schmetz era they end up being a more 1.1 to 1.3 points per game club. And that is a little scary to think about.
Well, I mean, Schmetzer was a player as well. And I mean, he was there back in the dog days of here's a hot dog and a soda, and that's your payment for today kind of thing, So I would imagine that at every step and every level, he really does have these guys' best interests at heart. And he's able to provide, framework and guidance to really prepare them, instead of just saying, listen, man, you get You get 300 minutes. If you can't do better than the next guy in 300 minutes, you're on the pine and then you're out the door. You know?
Yeah. Spence, you also did a thought exercise as part of these Sounder at Heart projects where you were looking at you were playing around with sort of incoming and outgoing scenarios, correct?
Yes.
So looking
yes,
at
the controversy.
Looking at what players that Seattle could potentially move off of and players throughout the league that you think could potentially be good targets either in free agency or via trade or whatever the case may be. So why don't you tell us what you were cooking on with that, what you found, or like why you picked the players you did, for why they were potential departures, and then what you were kind of looking at from the outside targets and who they were, which I'm looking forward to getting into because I got thoughts on.
Yeah. So this is just a thought experiment. I very firmly believe, as one GM told me, it's the goddamn Sounders. They're 5 deep at every position, and they have to have 8 to 9 injuries before they change how they play, and they're the worst team to prepare for. So that being said, like, I don't think they have to make a move. I don't even think they should make moves at this point in the season. I think they're treading water just fine. But like, what if, right? Like, what would happen? You know, who do you think could get some good value? So this thought exercise is not what I wish it would be, but like what it could be. And the first one off my list, the first one outgoing, is our very own Danny Musovski. And I know you're a big Moose guy. And
I'm a big Moose guy. Well, okay. Let's set the stage, because we just talked about how cost per goal, he's one of the most valuable assets in the entire league. And that's been my argument for why actually moving off him is not as great an idea. I think people seem to think of it as very binary. Like, his stock is the highest it's could ever be right now, so you may as well sell right now, because the likelihood that he's ever going to be this valuable again is not very high. But when I look at what he did last year, to me, it looked real to me. And yeah. I'm not like, maybe I'm just blind optimism, blind faith, but I'm not as worried about a guaranteed regression as everyone else is. I think they really unlocked him last year, and you can see the value in the numbers. And it seems riskier to me to move off of value like that when you know you have it and what it did for you last year, than it is to just keep them and keep capitalizing on that.
And that's true. And the thing I would say is, Moose got his opportunities, and he got them in Seattle. So then, like, why Seattle, not other places? One of the things that happened last year is, Jordan Morris goes down, Pedro de la Vega goes down. And so the Sounders were very much incentivized to play really choked up and have these intricate overlapping and overloads with really tight passing, because they had the guys to do it, right? Danny Musovski was able to drift and ghost and do all of this stuff because he was not seen as a primary threat. I would imagine on any scouting sheet, I imagine it's not Jordan, it's Danny, right? Like, better day in the office. And he proved them wrong, to his credit. However, a lot of these guys are back. And as they come back, the way to best utilize them is to let them have space. Jordan Morris is absolutely the most threatening if he has like 10 to 15 yards to run at a center back to then shoot. He's deadly, right? Pedro de la Vega is best when he has room to operate the channels, whether that's, Albert is Albert, and he's phenomenal, and he's criminally underrated and under-talked about. So I don't think it changes the math for him at all. But, Georgie Manungu, Pedro de la Vega, Paul Rothrock, Jesus Ferreira, all of these guys are really good when they have space to get into, because now you're forcing defenses to play the game of like, what don't you want? Do you not want to give up the space and have balls over the top of your head? Or do you not want them to be able to ping passes in tight circles? All of that means, in my opinion, is the average last touch, I think, is going to regress back maybe 10, 15 yards. And as it kind of recedes back, you're losing the optimal position for Danny. And if that's true, right, and you have Jordan, but you also have Osaze, who has been absolute lights out in the preseason, who is kind of in between.
Needs to play.
He needs to play, but he's kind of in between like a Jordan and a Danny for me. Like, he has got no problem being in tight spaces with people around him, and he's got no problem beating you with pace off the top. So,
and strength too.
And he's a big boy. I don't think people realize he's not going to get bullied very often. I think he can take it to all but the elite center backs.
He is the bully, not
exactly. The bully. I'm really excited to watch him play, actually. I think you saw a lot of Raul try and do this stuff, and he's a little bit shorter and he's a little bit lighter.
A little bit of a size differential there, yeah.
And he's like, I'll take it to you anyway. And I think Osasa is going to be able to take it to people in a whole different way. But all that being said is, I think you're now asking Danny to do things he's not optimized for.
Interesting. Okay.
And if he's going to be unoptimized for, and he's already a great asset value, I'm not saying you have to, but like,
it's
the
worth
price is never going to be higher.
You got to think about it. You got to think about it.
I think he's great. Context is king. He's brilliant, but I think you could call up somebody like Austin FC and say, hey, you guys are very similar. You got two elite wingers on either side who are really good at pinning the ears back and forcing center backs to come wide to defend. You got some good talent up the middle, up the spine.
You got Brandon Vasquez coming off a torn ACL.
And so I don't remember the alternate they were using, but he wasn't good enough.
Not
right?
Good. Yeah, no.
And so you're basically playing Schmetzer ball light. Why not have the guy Schmetzer used, right? Who can do the job? Like you saw him do it in the same exact patterns of play, except instead of that being like a secondary pattern the Sounders evolved into, it's your primary pattern that you're working for. So in my opinion, why not have somebody up there where you don't have to retool halfway through the season? God forbid if Brandon Vasquez goes down again. So I think you could move from him, and I think you could get some money and free up some space. Do you want to go to the second one, or do you want to add a final?
No, let's hit these next two guys.
Okay. Second, Kim Kiki. This is a bit of a weird one.
You would think on first glimpse he's like a lot older. Like how much value does he really have on the intra-league?
Yeah. But the thing is, like, he's very, very good. He's sneakily good, and it doesn't show up. He's about a half goal. He's worth about a half goal a game in positive differential. So he shuts out about half a goal's worth of XG every single game. And it's not with elite athleticism, but it is the thing between his ears. He's just seen so much elite soccer. He just puts out fires. I think that is a veteran presence a lot of teams would love to be able to pay to have. In particular, I think Bradley's New York Red Bulls, they need someone to balance Noah Eiley. They need somebody in that defense who can calm things down, especially as they're getting off energy drink murder ball soccer. And I think Kim Kihi's a good fit there. If they're not interested, Nashville SC has always tried to be an elite defensive team. And I think Kim gives them a pedigree and a tactical understanding that at times you were able to exploit and expose. So that's my second one. And then my third one, and the one I think I'm going to get the most hate on here, is Alex Roldan.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I know. Alex Roldan is the everyman. He's a stalwart in every sense of that word. I just think DC United, Dr. DC United.
Oh God, don't
absolutely fleece. I know. I hate that for him, but I think they would significantly overpay for both.
It would be an incredible swoop by them. They've been kind of trying to remake themselves over the offseason. They got Ty Bruno. Yep. They also broke their transfer record on. They've been spending hella money on like purely attackers, which that kind of goes against. I talk about this all the time. Like, I feel like teams, they fall into that trap. Like we were talking about in Atlanta and Toronto, they fall into this trap of like, if we just toss as much money as possible at the attack, we're gonna have these like wingers and these number 9s that are just so sick. Like the rest of the league's not gonna even know what to do. We're gonna destroy all of them. But because they have no spine, they have no back line, that doesn't work. And in a couple of these cases, they very clearly have not really thought about how these big money attackers actually fit together. We'll see how that works for DC United.
Yeah.
But what I've observed with Atlanta is it's like, Miguel Almiron and Alexi Marinchek and Emmanuel Latte Loth are all talented like in isolation. But when you put how do they play together when you actually put them on the field? Turns out the answer was not good. So I think DC United, their offseason, my initial read of it is like you should just do what I always say, which is like, if I was building a roster, I would start with the most just state-of-the-art best number 6 I could possibly find. And then maybe even in that, devote a DP spot to that. Maybe even be one of the teams that's devoting a DP spot to a center back. And then you get to like go get your Hani Mukhtar, go get your Andrews Dreyer. But like, I'm just a little skeptical of the DC moves, because it's like, all right, even if Ty Baribo and this I think Romanian guy that they signed are good, if you got no spine and you got no backline, I don't know how much good that's going to do you. So sorry, that was a tangent. But like,
no,
Alex
totally fine.
Alex Roldan is the type of guy they should be trying to get,
absolutely,
maybe even more so than some of these like big money attackers.
And I fully believe if anybody thought that he could pry them away, they could pry him away, from the Sounders, they would be making that phone call. But like, I also kind of hate moving him there as well. So I also put in the article, I really do think he could fit in really nicely in San Jose. It's
more about like thinking about their market value than it is saying like you want them to trade the guy. Like it's
purely, this is purely the spreadsheet. This is purely value proposition, running the differentials.
No one flame Spence for Ponte.
No, you can
on Alex Roldan to DC United. It's just
I just think you could tempt them into a massive overpay relative to what his present future value would be. I also think San Jose could really use him. I think Bruce would absolutely adore him, and he'd probably put a picture up on him on the mantle, because he's just such a solid veteran dude who won't poison the culture. And I think the more I talk to people in the league who do this for a living, that is so hard to find, and that's why teams fall apart.
And you know that Bruce knows this, because he's one of the guys who tried to get Paul Rothrock. So
exactly. So now we can move on to the fun part. Now that we've cleared some cap space, now that we've got some money, the first one on my big board would be Brooks Lennon.
I have said this before, Spence. I have said this before. I kind of said it in passing, and it wasn't a particularly well received idea. But I'll tell you my logic behind it. Which is that Brooks Lennon, if you look at, he was on Atlanta United forever. And by the end of it, he really fell out of favor there, because there was a long period of time. I don't know if you followed this, but there's a long period of time where they were basically running their whole offense through Brooks Lennon. He was leading their team in touches every single week, every single game. And he's a right back. And
minutes and sprint speed.
It was
and total distance covered.
He was the face of the franchise. They were like building the Brooks Lennon stat. The whole team was built around Brooks Lennon, like literally, and their fan base would crash out about it. But so if he's like, the centerpiece of your club, like he was for them seemingly for a while, that's not what you want. But what he can do is cross the absolute hell out of the ball very accurately. And he's one of those fullbacks that puts up really good assist numbers because of how good his wide service is. And he is a defensive liability. Do you think that's too strong? Like he's not
I think he's unfairly maligned for that. All right. Like we were saying, I mean, he's leading touches. He was running at or more like average Lodero numbers. Right?
Yeah, but so
Lodero was like 8 miles a game. I think Brooks Lennon at some point was like at 7.2. Like he was basically asked to be Marcelo, right? Except he didn't have any of the support Marcelo had in defense. So he's bombing end line to end line all game, every game. And it's like, dude, there's very savvy coaches who are going to put you in bad positions.
Yeah, but
I don't think he's a bad defender though.
On the Sounders though, you wouldn't need him to be defender of the year, just like as a crossing specialist that you can use as more of a depth piece or a spot starter. And just a guy that you like Brooks Lennon, you can there's like a floor of assist production that you can kind of bank on if he plays enough. Cause he honestly, his delivery is that good. I don't know if it's like Julian Gressel, Atlanta United tier, but he's very good at it. And so I think like I think for any really good stacked team, like we think the Sounders have, there's room for a specialist like that. So that's why this exact thought has popped in my head before, and no one thought it was a good take. So I feel validated, Spence. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the way I would deploy him is the Sounders want to be a left-sided build-up team. They want to run it through Nuhu, right? Nuhu's phenomenal defensively. Doesn't get enough accolades for that. Nuhu's very good. So, keep earning it up him. But if you just tell Brooks, hey, man, you're going to get the ball, and there's going to be gaps in spaces. And if you don't like the gaps in spaces, go up to midfield, and there's going to be gaps in spaces. And if you don't like those, go no farther then 20 to 35 yards from the halfway line. So if you're looking at a field, it's like two of the little bars that you see mowed into the grass away from the bar. And your whole job, because we need the attackers to have room to run into, because we want to force those bad decisions. If you think you can get a ball over the top for Georgie to run onto, if you think you can ping a diagonal over to Carl Rothrock and switch the field, which we've seen him do for a literal decade, then that never goes away. If you want to maybe try and float one in for Jordan Morris, who happens to be a very good header specialist and can score that way as well. Or if you don't like any of that, just go ahead and ping a ball, break two lines, and get it into Albert Rusnak's feet. And it's just you're able to start your key passes and these kind of incisive, just knifing attacks from a deeper position on the right side. And if you're doing that from a deeper position on the right side, you can cover for the fact that he's not bombing up and down the whole time. So then he's able to recover defensively, and he's able to start his recovery at a far more advantageous position. I will say, though, in doing this research, he did go down with some tendon issues. He's currently on trial at DC United. I think he was a cap casualty, and I think in order to save some face, he kind of said, "Oh, my tendon's bothering me. I can't be here anymore." But I think he still got it, and I think it'd be like Rage Controller quitting to see him in summer just pinging balls around.
Love it. Who else did you target up?
So this one is probably super obvious, and we don't have to stay a ton of time here, but Peter Musa. And I think you just give Dallas a big bag of money, just a monopoly-sized bag of money. And the pitch to Musa is, hey, man, we can get you A1, Tier 1, top flight clubs in Europe looking at you, and you will have a stage and a platform, and we are happy to sell you on, man. We just want like 20 goals, 5 assists.
And he's a guy who he does, for people who don't follow FC Dallas. I mean, he is one of the best and most efficient like volume goal scorers in MLS. And like he doesn't
have a number 10 feeding him either.
He does.
So he's doing this all by himself.
Yeah, and in a way that it never feels fluky or unsustainable. It feels very bankable with him. Like you can just write him in to push 20 goals every year. And I think people have been dying for that kind of mold of striker on the Sounders. You know, they kind of got that last year in Danny Musovski. He might have outscored Musa last year if he played enough minutes. But in all seriousness, like I think it's a different caliber of number 9, and just in terms of his ability to volume goal scoring.
Yeah, and I mean, the pitch to Musa is wouldn't be a lot more fun to win stuff, and I say that with all respect to FC Dallas, but they've shown they're willing to sell players, and if you're gonna say, hey, listen, we don't want to go out and spend $20 million on a gamble, pick him up. I'm sure he'd love to.
How is he as a work rate defensive forward? Because that would be my other question is like, you know, Schmetz is very particular about the types of, this is why he loves Jordan Morris in part, is because Jordan Morris maybe isn't the volume goal scorer that Musa is, but he's very well-rounded. He gives you a lot in terms of how much he runs. He works really hard, and he plays into this Schmetzer ball that we're seeing with the high pressing, and he provides that. Does Musa fit that, or would that be kind of an issue?
So I've not done video analysis. I'm just looking at this through the numbers perspective. From a numbers perspective, he's no worse than the box standard, center forward. I would imagine if you did do video analysis, you would really have to quantile it in a way where he's in competitive matches. FC Dallas has been in some dog days the last couple of years, and I would imagine that it would be very difficult for a player to really hustle when, you're playing some garbage time games.
You also have it as an intra-league addition for this new number 9, which a lot of people would not be happy about. That would be derided as unambitious. But like in terms of MLS proven number 9s, that's a fun one, man. Like like
I think
a guy like Hugo Kuipers or Peter Musa or something like that would be pretty fun on this team.
I'm not too sold on Kuipers personally. from what I've seen.
Okay, I see them as kind of similar, but maybe they're not.
They're similar-ish. I much prefer Musa. I really think the fan base, if you really break it down, they just want somebody to crack 20. They want somebody to crack 20 goals.
And that's
I think
fair.
Peter Musa
That's
could
fair.
do that.
Yeah.
And that's totally valid. Totally valid. If Peter Musa is just too hard of a get, I think you could buy the poor man's Peter Musa and Duncan McGuire from Orlando, because they just keep signing Brazilians, and he is buried on that depth chart. For those of you who don't remember, Duncan McGuire came in 23 as a rookie, set the league on fire, and I think it was Blackpool.
Blackburn.
A club in Blackburn, excuse me.
Blackburn Rovers, yeah.
Blackburn Rovers were like, hey, we're totally going to sign you. And he's like on the plane, and they didn't fax it in time because England is backwards as a country and still uses fax machines. And so he did not end up getting to play, came back to Orlando and kind of rode the bench a little bit because they had a really nice shiny DP they were looking at. But he is a big physical target forward who thrives on service. So he is 100% in like the same prime JMO mold.
I was going to say I never really thought of it in those terms, but it's like a good JMO comp. And he's like a lot younger.
He is a lot younger. I think he's 23, 24, if memory serves. Interestingly, he's had 2 different shoulder arthroscopes on his shoulders, which is, I think, a little weird, but shoulders aren't knees. Right? So take solace in that. He doesn't need his shoulders to score a bunch of goals. And I think with the kind of service that the Sounders play, he's not going to be asked to shoulder charge. And so you're able to kind of cover for that and take some of that grinder off of him. And he can kind of pick and choose. So I would imagine, you get him, maybe you stash him a little bit. You put him as like Danny Uleto Saze and Jordan Cook. Jordan is getting older. And it'll be a sad day when he hangs it up, but a guy like Duncan McGuire coming off the bench would probably lighten the mood a bit.
Yeah. No, I mean, he is not been getting as many minutes at Orlando City SC, but I think he showed that he's very much like a starting caliber MLS striker whenever they gave him the chance. And he also, he came in after an absolutely ballistic college career. I think he went to like Creighton, but that was a crazy. You don't see guys in D1 soccer like racking up 23, 24 goals in a season, or whatever had that last year very often. So, I like that one. That's not as flashy as Musa, but like when you're talking about value hunting, that's one that, I think the Sounders ever getting Duncan McGuire, probably never going to happen. But other teams in the league should be on that, because you're right, Orlando don't really use him anymore.
They don't, and I think what's tough is you just haven't seen him. And is that a flash in the pan? Was that him just riding like a super wave of confidence? What's the mentality like? What kick the tires kind of stuff. But in my kind of thought experiment, the optimal world would be not optimal, but like if this is JMO's last season, right? If he just says, listen, I'm not coming back at 32, 33. It would not be a bad thing to have Osaze and Duncan McGuire battle it out and force them to sharpen iron against each other, because both of them are in a pretty identical spot of they need to kind of put up if they want to get out, and if they want to get out the league. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a career MLS player, but I think both of those guys probably have dreams a little bit bigger. And so let them battle and reap the benefits.
Let's talk about this last guy from St. Louis CSC. What you got here?
Chris Durkin. This one is a very like Sounders coded one. So he had knee issues. Surprise, surprise. He plays a little bit more of a defensive guy, a little bit of more of a defensive midfielder. And in my opinion, when healthy, Durkin is one of the best possession distributors combined with a high defensive floor, for my money, in the Western Conference and maybe the whole league. He's just big. He's physical. He's imposing. He kind of blends the best of Roldan in terms of doesn't give up possession, with Obed just being a fierce terrier after the ball. But he has size. I mean, I think he's at or just above 6 foot. And one of the things you can kind of pick on the Sounders is aerial battles. I mean, Jackson Reagan leads aerial duels and aerial win rate, but you are constantly asking him to get up into the air. And that's not a great place for your star center back to be. You don't want him to be in the air very often, right? So if you can put a defensive workhorse in there who can kind of cover for that and just be big and physically imposing, and it doesn't matter, like no one's getting bullied off the ball. It's, you lose. I think that could be a great ad. And I also think he solves a very subtle roster puzzle, which is Christian Roldan is almost certainly getting called up, right? Like he was the poster boy at the Super Bowl for the USMNT.
He was.
I don't think you could bet on him not going. So I don't think Darkin is going to replace Roldan's engine, which is elite, and his attacking output, which is also elite at 89% passing accuracy at almost 2,000 passes, which is absurdly good.
Crazy.
But he provides positional stability. So he's like a true number 6, but in possession and in buildup, I constantly saw him. I did a little bit of video analysis for him. He constantly floats into like that 3 at the back center back line. He is 100% comfortable being back there. And so if you do want 3 at the back and you don't love the idea of Nuhu being the left-sided center back, I think Durkin covers that. And I think you can also put him out there if you want to kind of start choking games out and suffocating the field and just aerial denial, which is something I think, if you want to nitpick, the Sounders could be better at.
Yeah, that's a good scout. Like I would not have pegged Chris Durkin as an underrated player in MLS necessarily, but hearing you lay it out like that, it sounds like he's kind of sneakily a much better, much more valuable player in MLS than people realize, probably because he's on St. Louis City SC right now. He's kind of toiling away there, but that's when you're value hunting, like these are the type of guys you like to look at, like the Brooks Lennons and the Chris Durkins. They're not the most exciting, but I think something that Seattle and a lot of the other really good teams in the league are good at is finding those guys. So that's a good little list. I was glad to see Brooks Lennon on there to validate my previous take on it. And so good stuff. Did you have anything else on any of those guys? And then we can rapid fire this last little thing we were going to do.
Sure.
Wrap it
up. So I think that one of the underrated aspects of Schmetzer Ball is the fact that he is extremely loyal to his guys. And so when you have a dude like, Chris Durkin, Brooks Lennon, even Duncan McGuire to some extent, who have, they don't have a clean bill of health. I don't think any player does. But I think you can go to them and say, listen, if you ball out, if you do what we think you are capable of doing because we're paying money to acquire you, we will back you and we will start you and we will pay you and we will play you. And if you want to move up and move out, we won't hold that against you. I think that is something players chomp at the bit for. I think it's the list of people who would not want to be a part of the Sounders is probably extremely small.
Yeah. All right. So we've been going an hour, Spence. So we can start to wrap it up here. But we did have one more little thing that we wanted to get to before we call it a wrap for the night. Thank you to everyone as always for tuning in. We wanted to talk some expectations for new and returning faces in 2026. We've got a little list here of Sounders players that we're going to go through. And we can just kind of give a brief nutshell on what we're expecting for the 2026 season for all these guys. The list is Paul Arriola, Hassani Dotson, Jordan Morris, Pedro de la Vega, and Nikola Petkovic. So we got some interesting names here, especially some unknown commodities with Petkovic and Dotson coming in as new guys, and Arriola coming off the injury. De La Vega obviously is going to be coming off an injury. But let's start with Paul Arriola. Why was he someone that you wanted to talk about for this exercise?
Yeah, so one of the things I think is important at the beginning of the year is like properly framing expectations. And these are just my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me. But Paul is 31 coming off of an ACL tear. ACL constructions are pretty volatile at his age, even kind of more so. So even if he returns to like full game performance capacity, I think based on the research, like peer-reviewed medical things I've been looking at and putting together some of these models, you maybe get 75 to 80% of total production output. And so in my mind, what that would translate to is I think he will be a great player. I think he's going to work hard. Anything north of 900 minutes, I think we're baking cake and we're happy about it playing Jazz. I am worried at the work rate that Schmetzer expects of those wingers and the kind of cutting and passing and dipping and diving that they're all expected to do on that kind of a reconstruction surgery. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope he plays 3,000 minutes and he's the Golden Boot nominee and he gets to go play at Barcelona next year and like all his dreams come true. But I've heard it said kind of like, oh, we get Areola back, right? I think Areola probably is a spot replacement for Paulie more than anything else. And I think if you expect more of that I think you'll be a little disappointed.
The only reason I'm maybe a little more cautiously optimistic on Paul Areola being able to return to roughly his full capacity at age 31 coming off an ACL is everything I've ever heard about him dating back a long time, like dating back to his early MLS days with DC United and FC Dallas, is that he is an absolute freak as far as fitness and how he trains and maintaining his body, like even uniquely compared to other pro athletes. Like Paul Areola's got that Nico Ladero in him in terms of how hard he trains, but how well he trains and how fit he is. So I would hope that I feel like he might be uniquely equipped to withstand coming back from an injury of this magnitude at this age compared to others. I don't know that. That's just like a vibes hope or prediction, but that's the reason why I'm hopeful that we could see him actually return closer to his early MLS form, but when he was in Liga MX, when he was this super explosive, super dynamic player that was getting USMNT caps.
I hope for it. I love this team and I'm glad he's on it, but that might be a little wishful. I mean, there are a lot of knee injuries in pro soccer, men's pro soccer. And what we see consistently time and time again is the rule is you're getting about 80% back per injury, right? And you can definitely mitigate that. You can definitely do a lot of things to improve that. But if he has a tremendous amount of usage on his knees coming in already because he's explosive, getting back up to that point of explosivity, like the biomechanics, is probably tougher. And so that's why in my article that's going to hopefully come out here soon, I think you got to wait till midseason to properly evaluate him. It's one thing to know that you once did something. It's another thing to trust that reconstruction. And so in my mind, I'm super happy to be wrong here. I think anything north of 900 minutes, you're super happy about. And I think if you get 80%, you're happy about. But on the roster, I would probably peg him closer to spot replacement, rotational piece than out and out A1 starter.
Yeah, it's a logical projection based on his age and the injuries coming off of. Next up, Hassani Dotson. What do you got for Hassani going into 2020?
Yeah, so Hassani is super interesting because one of his best things is two-way balance, which is also one of Christian Roldan's best attributes. So he combines really good defensive solidarity. He's about a tackle per 90, tackle one, per 90, and about 1.1 interceptions per 90. So he's a bit of a turnover merchant, right? He's pretty good at getting things going. And he had 6 goals, 2 assists on 2 years. I mean, he's a genuine box-to-box presence, and he has some absolutely beautiful late arriving runs. I know his 2025 was limited, but I think at 28, coming off of some real good recovery in Minnesota, and he's had a full off season to also get acclimated. And with Obed gone, I think you can kind of pen him in as a starter, and you can expect him to play as a starter off the jump. So in my projection, I think if you can get anywhere north of 2,000 minutes, which would be almost a full season, you're super happy about that. 3 to 5 goals is something I also think is not unreasonable for him. You have Georgie with the cutbacks. And with Obed gone, Obed was kind of never asked to make the late arriving runs, but I think Hassani could do it, and he could do it really, really well.
That's one thing that he does perhaps at an even higher level than Obed, is getting in those spots to be goal dangerous.
Yeah.
And like
to be fair to Obed, I think he was purposely told not to, because Obed does score goals.
He will. So he really did start the end
yeah.
of last season. Yeah. And that was honestly what kind of took Obed from insanely good, highly rated prospect to a flat out terrifying demonic force of nature, was when he started scoring goals at the end of last year and in the playoffs. And he really did add that to his game. That's something that's been part of Hassani Dotson's game for his whole career. So I'm with you. I feel like 3 to 5 goals is a reasonable expectation. I do think he's the presumptive starter at that position beside Christian, with Obed going to Atletico Madrid. And I feel good about that. I don't know about you, but I feel pretty good about that. I think that is when I think about their, tell me what you think of this, but when I think about their ability to compete with, say, these Liga MX teams in CONCACAF Champions Cup, or last year when they played in Club World Cup, how good Obed got specifically, it was kind of an equalizer in those situations.
Absolutely.
Where when you're going up against these Liga MX teams that have players that are better than your typical MLS player, it's kind of about how many guys you have on the field that are at that level or can excel on that level. And Obed, when he was out there against these Liga MX teams, or even at the Club World Cup against these global powerhouse teams, he was not only on that level, but he excels on that level. And that is what allows you to compete and take results in tournaments and in situations like that. I have no doubt that Hassani Dotson is going to be a really good high-level starter against MLS competition. I think what he has to show and what he has to prove is that he can be that type of guy that Obed was in those situations where the competition level goes up. I think he can be that guy. We just kind of have to see him be that guy. And until we do see him be that guy, it is a little bit like, I would have a question mark about that going into CCC. Say if they're playing like a really good Liga MX team, can they tap into the level that they reached with Obed in the lineup? It's just an open question is all it is.
I personally would not expect that of him. I think if Hassani Dotson had that in his bag, he would not have been in Minnesota last year or the year before.
That's kind of,
I think it's tough. It's Obed's game IQ was just absurd. He was so good and criminally underrated at just seeing danger and snuffing it out before danger appeared. And that's tough to do. Like, it's easy when you're watching from the couch and you got like the semi bird's eye view, you see the whole field. It's a lot harder when you're on the field and you got to keep track, in your brain in real time where everybody's at. So again, hopefully he proves me wrong, and I'm eating crow on this at the end of the year. But I think you're just hoping for very serviceable, prime Brad Evans at the 6 kind of stuff.
I think that's a good comp. That's a good way to think about it. Jordan Morris next up. What do you got for old JMO?
Yeah, so this one's a little bit sadder. So I have it in here in my notes. He's 32, and last year we're looking at 207 injury days. So I wrote a piece. It's under Heart, talking about surfaces, talking about injury days, and kind of like how they interplay with each other. Go read it. It's a good, fun read. Subscribe if you want to. But he's got wear and tear on him, and like, it feels almost sacrilegious to say he's got a decade as of this season, and he has been nothing but wonderful, serviceable in that center forward position. He has elite finishing metrics. He's got a 29% conversion rate, which is just absolute absurdity. He's very, very, very good. I'm every time you see him on the ground in preseason, every time I saw him on the ground in preseason, it's a little bit of a clutch your pearls moment. Dear God, what's happening? Because at some point he's going to go down. He's going to have to stay down, and that's just going to have to be best for him and his family and everything else. And that'll be a dark day. But the thing is, the community rates him about a 6.08 from Relio's rating across 57 matches. So that's above average for the team. But his ratings are declining. So he went from about 6.12 in 24 to 6.02 in 25. That's only inclusive of the games he played. He's got elite finishing, but he's got 3 separate injuries, only played 750 minutes. I think 12 to 15 starts, and that was under the assumption they're doing a 4-2-3-1 with only one striker. I think part of the math of bringing Osaze in is you get to take some of the pressure off Jordan, and you don't have to ask him to have these really tough battling diagonal runs that he's so good at. You take that off his plate, but 12 to 15 starts. I'm hoping for 20 plus. Kind of by end of this season, I think we want to see 12, 15 goals, and that's just unfortunate. That's just kind of what the DP tag would require of him is some combination of 15 goal contributions. 12 to 15.
Yeah, my hope with this is, I feel like last year was a total kind of busted year for Jordan. It felt like every time he got healthy, he got injured again. It did to me. It felt like that. Like there was a couple of those that seemed like freak situations to me. Like I'm thinking of the shoulder injury he had against the Quakes, where he's going for the ball and he gets like tripped up in the air by the goalkeeper, comes down on his shoulder. Those are things that that to me is more of a freak occurrence than if he was repeatedly pulling his hamstring, which I think he was at one point last year. But then he got back from that and then immediately busted his shoulder. But I do think if there's a source of hope there, like I thought when he actually played last year, he was good. He got 7 goals.
No, he had elite finishing when he played.
Yeah. So if
he can
just get a little better injury luck this year, I'm hoping his availability will bounce back in that regard. But it's tough. He's coming off a year where I think he had 3 or 4 separate injuries and missed pretty much the whole season. But he did come back for the playoffs and banged a couple goals in that series against Minnesota United, including that really clutch goal to tie it at the end. So I'm hopeful that I think it's at least, knock on wood, going to be a higher availability year than it was last year when he missed so much time, but at least in one case in a pretty freak scenario. So I don't know. Maybe that's
there's nothing there saying, oh, okay, maybe we have, not we, but like maybe someone has to step in and say, hey, time to hang it up. I don't think we're there. But I think if you want to level set expectations, 205 injury days is not insignificant, right? No, the Sounders play more games year over year than any other team. They have the shortest offseason recovery time of just about any other team. So the wear and tear over a decade is just compounded year after year after year. And that's what has me nervous. It's elite finishing when he's on the field. And I really, really hope he gets to play in tandem with Osaze and it's a little Oba deuce where, Oba was able to give Clint some space to breathe and Clint didn't have to just grind his face against, 4 or 5 defenders every single game getting hacked at. I hope that's the case. But I think if you want to level set though, you gotta have 12 to 15 starts, you ideally 20 plus in regular season. And you got to have 12 to 15 goal contributions to call it a good return.
2 more guys to hit here, and then we'll call it a night. Speaking of players coming off injuries, Pedro de la Vega. What do you got for old PDLV?
He's worse. So Jordan was at 205. PDLV is at 225 injury days. He's a lot younger though, so we're youth and exuberance and bounce back. But he's 25. He's not super young, and I think it's the trends become patterns and patterns become permanent. And so I think it's one thing for Jordan, who came on a homegrown deal and really got to ingratiate himself. I think the clock is ticking like this for Pedro, and I think he knows it. His best quality, though, when we did get to see him play, he was averaging 3.1 progressive carries per 90 as a wing stretcher. He creates really great chaos, driving at defenders directly. He's really good in possession as well. His completion percentage was about 80% on his passes, which was phenomenal. And he had good ratings from the community. Again, these are from Relio, 6.13, and a really good creative profile. When healthy, he's electric, man. But that if is a load-bearing if. He's not always healthy. And unfortunately, the reality in a cap league is you cannot have your highest paid guys on the bench. That is the number one red flag for any sort of evaluation of a GM. And so maybe they can keep him around, maybe they can renegotiate, maybe they can bring him down in number. But, we really got to see something from him this year. And in my book, I mean, we got to see him north of 2,100 minutes played, which is, again, almost a full season. We need to be seeing 18 to 24 starts. And I don't think it's unreasonable to ask of him some combination of 10 goal scoring contributions, however that breaks down. He's a deep league, and that's just the level he's got to perform at in order to justify the return. And I think there's enough question mark years where you just say we're going to pass and reallocate resources.
Yeah, we've been talking about this offseason. Noah's been making the case for why they should move off him for a lot of the reasons you just went over. I personally am I can't get there quite yet. And my logic and reasoning for that is just like, God, he looks so good when he plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the thing is, to me, he showed last year that he's that caliber of player that's like a true game changer, a needle mover, the type of guy who's going to step up and make plays in the biggest moments of the game. Like, who's gonna step up and do what needs to do to score the goal to win the game. He showed that he was that guy. I felt like repeatedly, like I had every time he was starting a game, I felt like a sense of security in that they have someone out there who, when push comes to shove, is going to be that guy. He has been injured so much that, like, I totally get like where people are coming from with just he's good, but he's also not very available argument. It's a good argument, but for me, it's just tough to get to a place of like when you have a player whose talent level is this high, and you also have a roster that's shown that it's deep enough to function without him. I would argue last year was actually a successful year of Pedro de la Vega because he was the MVP of the only tournament that they ended up winning. Like, part of the value that you're getting from part of what you're getting from a DP is like the hope that they'll win you trophies. For all the injury time he missed last year, he did do that. If it's a situation where you only have him for like 1,000 to 1,500 minutes a year, but you're able to deploy him either in CONCACAF Champions Cup, Leagues Cup, or the playoffs, if you can rack one of those trophies with him kind of leading the way, to me, that's almost like you're justifying the value even if you don't play the full complement of minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and perhaps that's unfair criteria on me. I'm happy to hear it. Let me know in the comments. Straight up, Dallas calls. They say 1 for 1, no money. Musa for Pedro de la Vega.
Man.
That is the caliber of performance he has to justify. He is one of the biggest earners on this team, right?
Yeah.
Would you trade him for Sam Sturridge?
See,
would you trade him for? And we could go down the list of the other DPs that are around him in terms of evaluation.
I don't know if I would trade him for a pure number 9 like that, even if they're really good.
I'm just using the guys that he's close to in comp. That's why I'm using them. But like, that is a big time seat. That's something you can't just hand out and hope. I mean, people want to give Jordan flack. Jordan is an elite finisher, and he has been for the better part of a decade. He earned that outright. Pedro came in with all the expectations and lofty goals in the world, but I think it's a little bit time to start saying, all right, man, it's one thing to do it for a tournament, but like, those paychecks come every week, buddy.
Fair.
Those paychecks don't stop when
just
you stop
one
playing.
more year. Just one more year. That's what I'm saying. Just give me one more chance.
This is it. This is it. And I think from what the little I saw, following the team in preseason, I mean, he looked locked and dialed in. So I think he's locked and loaded. He roomed with Paul Rothrock. I would imagine that the two of them are consummate professionals and are really dialed in. But at the end of the year, we do the end of the year wrap up. Again, hope I'm wrong. Hope he's amazing. Hope he gets sold for $100 million. But he's got to play, and he's got to play more, and he's got to play more in the season. That's just the fact.
All right, last one of the night, Spence, and then we're going to call it a wrap for this episode of Lobbing Scorchers. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one. We got Nikola Petkovic, the fabled U22, arriving from Charlotte FC, and I feel like this is an interesting one because kind of no one really knows what to expect or what they should expect. It's kind of it's a gamble. It's a roll of the dice, a throw of the darts, and if it hits and it pays off, you've got who was at one time a $3 million transfer to Charlotte. He's got a senior cap with the Serbian national team, so there is pedigree there. I don't think it's as total like a nobody rando as it's being portrayed as, but it's also a guy that literally could not break through at Charlotte FC, and he really didn't show that he is a consistent MLS caliber player so far in his stateside. So, but I think the hope is that in Seattle's infrastructure and their ecosystem, they can bring out the best in him, and we're just going to see if they can actually do that.
Yeah, so I think with Petkovic, and it's funny because we're hearing a lot about Dale out of UW, and it's like, ooh man, that would not be great to have a draft pick competing with your U22. I mean, it is. It's phenomenal, but like from a cap standpoint, from a finance standpoint, unideal. I expect him to be a heavy rotation guy. So I think with Obed leaving, I think you 100% succession plan to have Dotson step in for Obed. And Christian's probably going to be at the World Cup. And so you bring Petkovic in to say, hey man, sit, listen, learn, show up, be a consummate professional. I think there is enough signal from the Charlotte front office, which is not a bad front office by any stretch of the imagination.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
And they're tight-fisted as well. So the fact that they were willing to spend, I think, is a good signal. And I think a senior team cap at any level is a good signal. I don't think he's a this year guy. And I'm happy to be wrong, but I think the best expectation for him across all competitions, heavily rotated in and out, 1,600 minutes. He's Matt Doyle's breakout candidate of the year for this team. From what little I was able to hear from some analysts and some else, I think it was just a quarterback problem where you get drafted and the guy who drafted you or the guy who paid for you is gone. And then you got to, and the new guy wants his guy. And I think that's kind of what was going on with him at Charlotte because it was really baffling. He wasn't even playing. Like nobody at the front office was like, dude, you got to play him. Like we paid too much for him to sit. But if it doesn't work, I think he's a prime candidate to be sold to somebody else. Sporting Kansas City has no need. Absolute, how to say this? Sorry, I'm fumbling my words here. We've been going pretty long here. They need bodies. And so
their roster is so tough. I was looking at that today. I was like, what is this squad doing?
So I think however it shakes out between him and Dale for that heavy rotation spot instead of like a spot starter, I think you take the other one and you call Sporting and you say, hey, we'll loan him for half season, $300,000 game if they start all the games.
Dale is in that position group?
Is he not? Did I have my
No, I think he probably is. I can't remember what his position is off the top of my head. So
yeah, central midfielder.
Okay,
yeah. Okay. I have him listed as a central midfielder with huge upside from UW. But the point being is, and I think this kind of goes back to the very top of our conversation. We can end on this note. This is where we start to see the flywheel of the Sounders Academy go bananas, because I don't think it would be very difficult at all to loan out an interleague loan Dale or Petkovic or Manungu if you just don't have the ability to play them. And I think they're so good and so dominant, they would be starters for other teams.
Yeah.
And the Sounders and almost every MLS team is really lucky in the sense that they do not have to sell talent to fund the whole team. So I think they can really pick and choose, how they want to get the resources back. And, but I think Petkovic is I think by mid-season, if we're like, we're seeing him start, we're seeing him go, probably got some ups and downs. I wouldn't feel confident putting any sort of performance on him other than minutes. Can he get 1,000 minutes, 1,500 minutes? Probably a good return.
He's the biggest wild card on the roster. My personal expectations for him, based on what I've read and researched about the U22 hit rate, is that he's probably going to end up being, best case scenario, a Leo Chu type contributor, which I know is probably nightmarish sounding to some people, but like I just mean like a guy who probably shows flashes and instances of being a contributor, but never quite fully puts it together as a regular starter or needle mover. That's sort of the expectation that I go into any U22 with, unless they were to do something where they went really, really big and splashed on like a Dejan Joveljic style player, then I might adjust my expectations a little bit. But a guy like this that you're just kind of taking a flyer on from Charlotte, I'm trying to manage my expectations. But on the other side of that, it's like, if it does hit in this pedigree that we see from the Serbian national team and that he's established in his career, if he's able to capitalize on that, then the payoff is huge. That's why I don't really mind. I don't mind the flyer, even if it doesn't work.
Even if it's just he can give Christian a rest in a midweek game consistently and the floor doesn't fall out. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, for this year, I imagine they have him for more than 1 year, but if that's all that is for this year, phenomenal. Christian needs a break. He's got a lot of minutes coming his way. So if he can rotate in, we're sitting pretty. And I think that's enough to say, all right, cool. As fans, we can feel confident rolling into 27 with him on the roster.
God knows it would be a welcome sight to have an ability to rest Christian Roldan, which he did not rest very much last year. But
no.
All right, Spence, we've been ripping for 90 minutes, so let's call it right there. Great stuff tonight. Thanks for sharing all your research and your projects here with us. Before we get out of here, did you want to just plug real quick when stuff might be dropping or where people can look to find it when it does drop?
Yeah, so I'm on Blue Sky at MLS Zwazo, ZWAZO. Post some stuff there. All my written work is going to be at Sound at Heart. Just go subscribe. If you like this stuff, you're going to love their stuff. It's hand in hand. And I just wanted to end very quickly. I want to send a big shout out to Nathan Salmon. I would not be a Sounders fan if it wasn't for him. And he has been phenomenal as both a friend and as a really good mentor and an aspirational role model. So I want to give him a big shout out and say thank you, because I wouldn't be here otherwise. You got to remember.
Shout out Nathan for delivering us Spence. Yeah. Hell yeah. Love that. All right, Spence, thank you again for hopping on tonight with me. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and like the video, comment, subscribe, rate 5 stars, write us a review, follow the Instagram, follow the TikTok, all socials. I think that's it for Schilling for now. We'll be back at it. I'll be back at it on Monday for Lobbing Scorchers kickoff, but also we're planning on doing a lot of preseason coverage on Sunday. I think I'm going to try and make it out to Long Acres, and we want to do some coverage on site. We'll see what pans out with that, but keep an eye out for all that on all our channels as well. But we're going to call it right there for this one. Until next time, we out. Peace.